The sound of shattering glass echoed through the Stockton, California saloon as Josephine Sterling stumbled backward through the swinging doors, her belongings sailing after her into the dusty street. Blood trickled from her split lip where someone's hand had struck her moments before, and the jeers of the townspeople followed her out into the harsh afternoon sun of August 1878. Harlot. One woman shrieked from the boardwalk, her face twisted with righteous fury. "We don't want your kind corrupting our children." Josephine barely heard the words anymore. She had heard them so many times over the past 3 days that they had become a constant ringing in her ears, like the aftermath of an explosion that never quite faded. She pressed her hand to her mouth, tasting copper and salt, and tried to gather the few possessions that now lay scattered in the dirt. A worn carpetbag, 2 dresses, neither particularly fine, a small leather journal that had been her mother's, the modest sum of what she owned in the world. "Get out of Stockton," someone else yelled. A rotten tomato sailed through the air and exploded against her shoulder, spraying seeds and pulp across her already ruined dress. She had been a schoolteacher, respected, even liked. But that was before Daniel Mercer, the banker's son, had decided to amuse himself with her affections, before she had believed his promises, before she had given herself to him in a moment of foolish trust and genuine love. And it was certainly before his family had arranged his hasty marriage to the mayor's daughter, leaving Josephine to face the consequences alone when her condition became impossible to hide. The miscarriage had come 3 weeks ago, leaving her hollow in more ways than one. But the town's judgment had not miscarried with it. Shame, they said, was permanent. Shame was a stain that could not be washed away, no matter how many tears she shed or how many times she tried to explain that she had truly believed Daniel would marry her. Josephine managed to stuff her belongings back into the carpetbag with shaking hands. Her savings amounted to $17, hardly enough to start over in another town, but she would have to make it work somehow. The boarding house had evicted her that morning, the church had barred its doors to her, and even the mercantile owner who had known her since she was a child refused to sell her supplies. "Move along," Sheriff Dawson barked from the saloon entrance, his belly straining against his vest. "You got an hour to be gone from town limits, or I'll arrest you for vagrancy." Josephine wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Vagrancy. As if she had chosen this, as if any of this had been her choice. But she bit her tongue and nodded, clutching her carpetbag to her chest as she turned east, away from the only home she had ever known. Her parents were dead 5 years now, killed in a wagon accident on the road to Sacramento. She had no siblings, no relatives willing to acknowledge her existence. Daniel certainly would not help her, not when he had his new bride and his family's reputation to consider. The road stretched before her, empty and shimmering in the heat. Summer in California's Central Valley was unforgiving, and the sun beat down on her uncovered head with what felt like personal malice. She had left her bonnet at the boarding house in her haste to escape, and now she would pay for that oversight with a burned scalp and face. She walked for what felt like hours, though the sun's position suggested it had been less than one. Her boots, which had never been designed for long-distance travel, rubbed blisters on her heels. Her throat grew parched, and she realized with growing panic that she had no water and no immediate way to obtain any. The road to Sacramento was long, and farms were scattered far apart in this region. She might walk for miles before finding someone willing to help her, and given the speed with which gossip traveled, word of her disgrace had likely preceded her. The landscape stretched endlessly in all directions. Flat fields punctuated by the occasional oak tree, dusty roads that seemed to lead nowhere, and the distant purple smudge of mountains that promised no sanctuary. Josephine felt tears threaten again, but she blinked them back stubbornly. She had cried enough. Tears would not change her circumstances or win her any sympathy from the world. A sound behind her made her turn. A wagon was approaching, moving fast enough to kick up a plume of dust. For a moment, hope flickered in her chest. Perhaps someone would offer her a ride or at least some water. But as the wagon drew closer, she recognized the driver. Mrs. Henderson, one of the women who had been loudest in her condemnation. Josephine stepped off the road to let the wagon pass, keeping her eyes fixed on the ground. But Mrs. Henderson pulled the horses to a stop beside her anyway. "I hope you know what you have done," the older woman said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You have brought shame on every decent woman in Stockton. Girls like you make it harder for the rest of us to hold our heads high." Josephine said nothing. What could she say? That she had loved Daniel, that he had promised her marriage, that she had believed him when he said he could not live without her. None of it mattered now. The world judged women harshly for such mistakes, and there was no court of appeal. "You are lucky we did not tar and feather you," Mrs. Henderson continued. "Some wanted to, you know. It was only Sheriff Dawson's intervention that spared you that humiliation." Josephine looked up then, meeting the woman's eyes directly. "Thank you for your mercy," she said, her voice steady despite the fear and anger churning in her stomach. "I hope you never know what it is to love the wrong person." Mrs. Henderson's face flushed an ugly red. "How dare you speak to me of love? You know nothing of love, only of sin and degradation." She snapped the reins, and the wagon lurched forward, leaving Josephine coughing in another cloud of dust. The encounter left her shaken, and even more resolved to put as much distance between herself and Stockton as possible. She resumed walking, though her legs trembled with exhaustion and her head had begun to pound from the heat and lack of water. The sun continued its slow arc across the sky, indifferent to her suffering. By the time the shadows began to lengthen, Josephine had to admit she was in serious trouble. She had passed no farmsteads, encountered no one else on the road, and the landscape remained stubbornly inhospitable. Her lips were cracked, her tongue felt thick in her mouth, and dark spots were beginning to dance at the edges of her vision. She needed water soon, or she would collapse. A stand of oak trees appeared in the distance, their shade promising at least some relief from the sun. Josephine left the road and stumbled toward them, her carpetbag feeling like it weighed 100 pounds despite its meager contents. She reached the trees and sank down gratefully in their shade, leaning against a trunk and closing her eyes. Just for a moment, she told herself. Just long enough to rest and gather her strength. Then she would continue walking. Sacramento was still days away on foot, but surely she would find help before then. Surely someone would show her mercy. But as she sat there, exhaustion washed over her in waves, and despite her best efforts to stay alert, her eyes drifted shut. The sound of birds in the branches above grew distant, and the world faded into darkness. When consciousness returned, it came slowly and with confusion. Josephine was aware first of softness beneath her, so different from the hard ground where she had collapsed. Then she noticed the smell of coffee and something savory cooking. Her eyes fluttered open to find herself lying on a bedroll inside what appeared to be a lined shack, the kind of rough shelter that ranchers built on far corners of their property for cowboys to use during the work season. A man sat by a small stove in the corner, his back to her as he tended whatever was in the pan. He was tall and lean, his dark hair curling slightly at the collar of his faded blue shirt. Josephine tried to sit up, and the movement must have alerted him because he turned immediately. "Easy now," he said, his voice low and calm. "You gave yourself quite a scare out there. How are you feeling?" Josephine's hand went instinctively to her bodice, checking that everything was still in place and proper. It was, and she felt a small measure of relief. "Where am I?" she managed to ask, her voice coming out as a croak. "About 5 miles northeast of where I found you," the man said. He picked up a tin cup and filled it from a canteen, then crossed the small space to kneel beside her. "Here, drink this slowly. You were severely dehydrated when I came across you." Josephine took the cup with trembling hands and sipped carefully. The water was warm but clean, and it tasted like salvation. She wanted to gulp it down, but something in the man's eyes warned her to follow his instruction, so she forced herself to take small swallows. As she drank, she studied him more carefully. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with a weathered face that spoke of years spent outdoors. His eyes were a remarkable shade of gray-blue, and they watched her with concern but no judgment. He wore the practical clothing of a working cowboy, worn denim trousers, scuffed boots, and a leather vest over his shirt. A hat sat on the table by the stove, and she noticed a gun belt hanging from a peg on the wall. "Thank you," she said when she had drained half the cup. "I do not know what would have happened if you had not found me." "Nothing good," he said frankly. "The sun would have done for you by nightfall, and if it did not, the coyotes might have gotten curious. This area is not safe for traveling alone, especially not on foot." He paused, studying her face. "My name is Parker Oaks. I work the Crossroads Ranch about 10 miles north of here." "Josephine Sterling," she replied, then immediately wondered if she should have given a false name. But it was too late now, and something about Parker Oaks's steady gaze made her feel that dishonesty would be pointless anyway. "Well, Miss Sterling, I have got some stew here that is nearly ready. I expect you have not eaten today, and you need to get your strength back." He returned to the stove and began ladling the food into a bowl. Josephine pulled herself into a sitting position, grateful that the dizziness had mostly passed. "I should not impose on your hospitality any longer than necessary. If you could just point me toward the nearest town, I will be on my way." Parker turned back to her with the bowl and a spoon. "The nearest town is Stockton, and I am guessing that is not where you want to go, given that I found you walking away from it as fast as you could manage." He handed her the bowl. "The next closest is Lodi, about 15 miles north, and Sacramento is a good 40 miles beyond that. Either way, you are in no condition to travel tonight. You can rest here, and we will figure out what to do in the morning." She wanted to argue, but her hands were shaking as she accepted the bowl, and she knew he was right. Besides, the smell of the stew was making her stomach clench with hunger so fierce it was almost painful. She took a bite and had to suppress a moan at how good it tasted. Beef and potatoes and carrots in a rich broth seasoned with herbs. Parker settled himself on a stool near the stove, giving her space, but remaining close enough to help if she needed it. "I do not mean to pry," he said after a moment, "but it seems like you left Stockton in something of a hurry. Are you in trouble?" Josephine froze with the spoon halfway to her mouth. Here it was, the moment when she would have to decide whether to tell the truth and face more judgment, or lie and risk being caught in the deception. She looked at Parker Oaks's face, searching for any sign of the cruelty and condemnation she had become so accustomed to in recent weeks. She found none. "I suppose that depends on your definition of trouble," she said slowly. "I am not running from the law if that is what you are asking, but I am no longer welcome in Stockton, and I thought it best to leave before things became even more unpleasant." "Unpleasant," Parker repeated. He gestured to her face, where she knew a bruise was probably forming from the blow she had taken. "Is that how you got that mark?" Josephine's hand went to her cheek automatically. There were some who felt their displeasure needed to be expressed physically. Something dangerous flashed in Parker's eyes, gone so quickly she might have imagined it. "I see," he said quietly. "And they just let you go off on your own with no horse, no supplies, and no clear destination." "They gave me an hour to leave town," Josephine said. "I considered myself fortunate. Some wanted worse for me." Parker was quiet for a long moment, and Josephine braced herself for the inevitable questions, the demands to know what she had done to deserve such treatment. But when he spoke, it was only to say, "You should eat the rest of that stew before it gets cold. We can talk more in the morning when you have had some rest." She obeyed, too tired and too grateful to argue. The food worked wonders, warming her from the inside and giving her enough energy to feel more human. When she had finished, Parker took the bowl from her and gestured to the bedroll. "You can sleep there tonight. I will bed down by the stove." "I cannot take your bed," Josephine protested. "You have already done too much. Miss Sterling, I am not going to argue with you about this. You need rest more than I do, and I have slept in far less comfortable places than this floor, believe me." His tone was gentle but firm. "Now lie down before you fall over." Too exhausted to mount any further protest, Josephine did as he said. The bedroll was more comfortable than any bed she had slept in for weeks, certainly better than the hard mattress at the boarding house. Parker moved around the shack quietly, banking the fire in the stove and arranging some blankets on the floor for himself. "Parker," Josephine said into the gathering darkness. "Yes. Why are you helping me? You do not know anything about me. I could be everything they said I was." There was a pause, and then his voice came through the shadows, warm and certain. "I know you were walking alone in dangerous country with nothing but a carpet bag and determination. I know somebody hurt you and drove you out. And I know that everyone deserves a chance to tell their story before judgment is passed. That is enough for me." Tears leaked from the corners of Josephine's eyes, but these were different from the ones she had shed before. These were tears of relief, of gratitude for finding one person in the world who looked at her and saw a human being instead of a shameful object lesson. "Thank you," she whispered. "Get some sleep, Miss Sterling. Things always look better in the morning." Josephine wanted to believe him, but sleep claimed her before she could decide whether such optimism was justified. She woke to sunlight streaming through the gaps in the shack's walls and the sound of someone moving around outside. For a moment, she could not remember where she was, and panic seized her. Then the events of the previous day came flooding back, and she sat up carefully, relieved to find that her head no longer pounded and her vision was clear. Parker's bedroll by the stove was already neatly rolled and tied. Through the window, she could see him tending to two horses, one a sturdy bay and the other a gray mare with a white blaze on her face. He was brushing them with long, steady strokes, speaking to them in a low voice that carried affection and familiarity. Josephine stood, smoothing her wrinkled and stained dress as best she could. She felt grimy and disheveled, aware that she must look like a vagrant. Her fingers found the tangles in her dark hair and tried to work through them, but without a brush or mirror, it was a hopeless task. The door opened and Parker stepped inside, carrying a pail of water. "You are awake. Good. I brought fresh water from the creek for washing, and there is more coffee if you want it." "You are very kind," Josephine said. "I must look a fright." "You look like someone who had a hard day yesterday," Parker said matter-of-factly. "But you are standing, which is an improvement over when I found you. There is some bread in the sack by the stove and a bit of cheese left. Not much of a breakfast, but it will do until we get you somewhere more civilized." The mention of going somewhere brought reality crashing back. "About that," Josephine said hesitantly, "I need to get to Sacramento or perhaps San Francisco. Somewhere large enough that I can find work and start over. But I only have $17, and I know that will not get me far. I was wondering if perhaps there might be work available at your ranch. I am a hard worker, and I have experience teaching. I could tutor children or do housework, or anything really." Parker poured coffee into a cup and handed it to her before responding. "The Crossroads Ranch belongs to my uncle, and it is mostly a cattle operation. We do not have much need for a teacher, and the housework is handled by my aunt and cousin." He saw her face fall and added quickly, "But that does not mean there are no options. Let me think on it while you eat something." Josephine forced herself to eat the bread and cheese, though her stomach was tight with anxiety. The brief hope she had felt upon waking was fading fast. If Parker could not help her, she would be back where she started, alone on the road with no prospects and nowhere to go. Parker watched her with those steady gray-blue eyes, and she had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see right through her brave facade to the fear beneath. "Finally," he said, "I need to know what happened in Stockton, Miss Sterling. Not because I am judging you, but because if I am going to help you, I need to understand what we are dealing with. Will anyone come looking for you? Is there anyone who might try to cause you further harm?" Josephine set down her cup with hands that were not quite steady. This was the moment she had been dreading. Once she told him the truth, everything would change. He would look at her differently, speak to her differently. He might even decide that she was not worth helping after all, that the good citizens of Stockton had been right to cast her out. But she was tired of lies and evasions, tired of shame weighing on her shoulders like a physical burden. And Parker Oaks had shown her more kindness in 12 hours than anyone in Stockton had shown her in 3 weeks. He deserved the truth. "I was a school teacher," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had been teaching in Stockton for 4 years since my parents died. I was good at my job and I loved the children. Last year, I met Daniel Mercer. His father owns the largest bank in town. Daniel was charming and attentive, and he said he loved me. He promised we would be married." She paused, gathering her courage for the next part. Parker said nothing, just waited with infinite patience. "I believed him," Josephine continued. "I know how foolish that sounds, but I did. And when he asked me to prove my love for him, I did that too. I gave him everything because I thought we would be husband and wife." Her voice cracked, but she forced herself to continue. "Then his father found out about us, and suddenly Daniel was engaged to the mayor's daughter. A more suitable match, they said. Better for business. Daniel told me he was sorry, but his family's wishes had to come first." "And you were pregnant," Parker said quietly. It was not a question. Josephine nodded, feeling the familiar burn of tears. "I was. The whole town found out somehow. I lost my position at the school immediately. The boarding house wanted to evict me, but I had paid through the end of the month, so they had to let me stay until then. People started calling me names in the street, refusing to do business with me. The church told me I was not welcome at services until I had done proper penance for my sin." "What happened to the baby?" Parker's voice was gentle, but Josephine still flinched at the question. "I lost it 3 weeks ago. There were complications, and the midwife said I nearly died. But even after that, even after I had paid such a terrible price, the town would not forgive me. If anything, they became worse, as if they were angry that I had survived when perhaps I should not have. They said I was a warning to other girls about the consequences of immorality. Yesterday, someone struck me in the saloon when I went in to ask if there might be work washing dishes. They threw me into the street and told me to leave town. The sheriff agreed, so I left." She waited for Parker's expression to change, for disgust or contempt to cloud those clear eyes. But when she finally worked up the courage to look at him, she found only sadness and anger on his behalf, not directed at her. "That man," Parker said, his voice tight with controlled fury. Daniel Mercer. He just let you face all of that alone, did not offer to help you or support you in any way. He married the mayor's daughter 2 weeks ago, Josephine said bitterly. I heard they had a lovely ceremony at the church that would not allow me through its doors. I am sure they will be very happy together. Parker stood abruptly and walked to the window, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Josephine watched him anxiously, wondering what he was thinking, bracing herself for the inevitable rejection. Finally, he turned back to her. Miss Sterling, I want to make something very clear to you. What happened to you in Stockton was not justice. It was cruelty, plain and simple. That man made you promises and then abandoned you to face the consequences of his actions alone. The town should have held him accountable, but instead they punished you. That is not right and it is not fair, and I will not stand here and pretend that it is. Josephine stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. You do not think I am shameful. I think you made the mistake of loving someone who did not deserve it, Parker said. And I think you have suffered more than enough for that mistake. As for shame, well, I have seen plenty of it in my time, and I can tell you this. Shame does not live here, Miss Sterling. Only second chances do. The tears came then, hot and fast, and Josephine could not stop them. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed, releasing weeks of pent-up grief and fear and humiliation. She cried for the baby she had lost, for the life she had imagined with Daniel, for her parents who were not there to help her, for the career she had loved and the respect she had earned, all of it gone in the space of a few terrible months. She felt Parker's hand on her shoulder, awkward but comforting, and heard his voice saying, "It is all right. You are safe now. I promise you it is going to be all right." When the storm of tears finally passed, Josephine felt wrung out but somehow lighter, as if she had set down a burden she had been carrying for too long. Parker handed her a handkerchief, and she wiped her face, trying to compose herself. "I apologize," she said. "That was unseemly." "That was human," Parker corrected. "And long overdue, I would wager. Now, here is what I think we should do. I need to deliver some horses to a buyer in Sacramento in 2 days' time. You can travel with me. Once we get there, I have some friends who might be able to help you find respectable work. A widow woman I know runs a boarding house for young ladies, very proper and safe. She is always looking for help, and she does not gossip or judge. Would that suit you?" Hope, fragile and tentative, began to bloom in Josephine's chest. "You would do that for me?" "Even knowing everything you now know." "Especially knowing everything I now know," Parker said firmly. "You have been dealt a poor hand, Miss Sterling, but that does not mean the game is over. You just need someone to stand with you instead of against you. I am volunteering for the position." "I do not know how I will ever repay you," Josephine said. "I do not want repayment. I want you to have the chance to rebuild your life, to find some peace and maybe even some happiness. That will be payment enough." He smiled then, a genuine warm expression that transformed his weathered face. "Besides, I could use the company on the road. It gets boring talking to horses all the time, no matter how good their listening skills are." Josephine found herself smiling back, the first real smile she had managed in weeks. "When would we leave?" "Tomorrow morning." "I need to finish up some work here today, but we can start fresh at dawn. That will give you time to rest and recover your strength. The journey will take 4 or 5 days, depending on the weather and the roads. We will camp some nights and stay in town when we can. I will make sure everything is proper and respectable." "I trust you," Josephine said, and was surprised to realize it was true. This man, whom she had known for less than a day, had already proven himself more trustworthy than people she had known her entire life. Parker nodded, seeming to understand the weight of those 3 words. "All right, then. It is settled. Now, why do not you rest some more while I finish with the horses? We have a couple I am breaking for the ranch and they need work. You can watch if you like or stay inside if you prefer." "I would like to watch, if I would not be in the way." "You would not be in the way at all." They spent the rest of that day in a companionable routine. Parker worked with the horses, showing a patience and skill that impressed Josephine greatly. She sat on the fence rail and watched, fascinated by the way he gentled the nervous animals, never forcing or frightening them but instead waiting for trust to develop naturally. It occurred to her that he treated her much the same way, giving her space and time to adjust to her new circumstances without pressing for more than she was ready to give. In the late afternoon, they walked down to the creek together so Josephine could wash properly. Parker gave her privacy, stationing himself upstream and keeping watch for any potential trouble. The cold water felt wonderful on her sun-burned skin, and she scrubbed away days of dirt and sweat, wishing she could wash away the memories as easily. That evening, Parker cooked another simple meal, and they ate together as the sun set in spectacular shades of orange and gold. Josephine found herself talking more freely than she had in months, telling Parker about her childhood in Stockton, about her parents and how much she missed them, about the joy she had found in teaching. Parker, in turn, told her about growing up on the Crossroads Ranch, about learning the cowboy trade from his uncle, about the satisfaction of working with animals and being outdoors. He spoke of the hard winters and long days, of cattle drives and branding season, of the camaraderie among the ranch hands and the simple pleasures of a job well done. "You ever want more than this?" Josephine asked. "A ranch of your own, perhaps, or a different kind of life?" Parker considered the question carefully. "I have thought about it. My uncle has been good to me, but the ranch will go to my cousin when he passes, which is as it should be. I have been saving my wages, hoping to buy some land of my own one day. Nothing grand, just enough for a small herd and maybe a house, but that is still a ways off." "It sounds like a good dream," Josephine said wistfully, "having a place that is truly yours where no one can cast you out." "It is a good dream," Parker agreed. "And dreams have a way of coming true if you work hard enough and get a little bit lucky." He looked at her thoughtfully. "You will have dreams again too, Miss Sterling, better ones than you can imagine right now." "I hope you are right," Josephine said. But hope, she was learning, was a fragile thing, easily crushed but somehow capable of growing back even stronger when nurtured. That night, she slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, and when dawn came, she woke feeling stronger and more ready to face whatever lay ahead. Parker had the horses ready and supplies packed by the time Josephine emerged from the shack. He had given her the gray mare to ride, a gentle creature named Silver who responded to the lightest touch on the reins. Josephine's carpetbag was secured behind her saddle, and Parker had added some additional supplies: a bedroll, a canteen, and some food for the journey. "Ready?" he asked, swinging up onto the bay with an easy grace that spoke of years in the saddle. "Ready," Josephine confirmed, though her heart was racing. She had not ridden a horse in years, and she prayed she would remember how. But Silver seemed to sense her nervousness and stood perfectly still until Josephine was settled, then moved forward with a smooth gait that was easy to follow. They set out as the sun was just beginning to paint the eastern sky with light, heading north and west toward Sacramento. The morning air was cool and fresh, a welcome relief from the previous day's brutal heat. Birds sang in the scattered oaks, and in the distance, Josephine could see the dark shapes of cattle grazing peacefully. "This is all part of the crossroads?" she asked. "This section is," Parker said. "The ranch covers about 5,000 acres total." My uncle built it up from nothing over 30 years. It is a good operation, well run and profitable." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the horses setting an easy pace. Josephine found herself relaxing into the rhythm, her body remembering skills she had thought forgotten. The landscape rolled past, dry grasslands giving way to patches of woodland and the occasional farm or small homestead. Around midday, they stopped to rest the horses and eat. Parker found a spot near a stream where the animals could drink and graze while he and Josephine sat in the shade of a willow tree. He had packed bread, dried beef, and apples, simple fare but satisfying. "Can I ask you something?" Josephine said as they ate. "Of course." "Why were you at that line shack yesterday? It seemed quite remote for regular work." Parker took a bite of apple and chewed thoughtfully before answering. "I was checking the fences in that section and moving some strays. We rotate through all the grazing areas to make sure everything is secure and the cattle have not gotten into trouble. It is solitary work which suits me sometimes. I like the quiet." He glanced at her. "But I am glad I happened to be out there yesterday. The timing was fortunate." "More than fortunate," Josephine said. "It was providential. I think I was nearly done when you found me." "Well, you are not done now," Parker said firmly. "You are just getting started on the next chapter, and I have a feeling it is going to be a good one." His confidence was infectious, and Josephine found herself believing it might actually be true. Maybe there was a future ahead of her that did not involve shame and condemnation. Maybe she could find work and build a new life. Maybe, eventually, she could even forgive herself for the mistakes she had made. They rode on through the afternoon, passing through the small town of Lodi as the sun was lowering in the sky. Parker suggested they could stay at the hotel there, but Josephine noticed how his jaw tightened when they rode down the main street, saw how people stared at them with open curiosity. "Could we camp instead?" she asked quietly. "I am not quite ready to face another town yet." Parker understood immediately. "Of course. There is a good spot a few miles north near a creek. We will stop there." The campsite he chose was sheltered by trees and offered fresh water and grass for the horses. Parker made short work of setting up camp, his movements efficient and practiced. He built a small fire, more for comfort and cooking than for warmth in the mild August evening, and soon had coffee brewing and beans heating in a pan. Josephine helped as much as she could, though she was clearly out of her element. Parker showed her how to arrange the bedrolls and where to store the supplies to keep them safe from animals. He treated her like a partner, not a burden, asking her opinion and showing her respect that felt like a balm to her wounded spirit. As they ate dinner with the fire crackling between them and the stars beginning to emerge overhead, Josephine realized something startling. She was enjoying herself. Despite everything that had happened, despite the fear and uncertainty that still lurked at the edges of her mind, she was sitting here with Parker Oaks and feeling something close to contentment. "Tell me about Sacramento," she said. "I have never been there." "It is a real city," Parker said. "Not as big as San Francisco, but substantial. Lots of people, lots of noise, lots of opportunity. The boarding house I mentioned is on the north side, away from the rougher areas. Mrs. Callahan runs a tight ship, very respectable. She takes in young women who need a safe place to stay, and she helps them find honest work. Some are widows, some are just girls who came west looking for a better life. She does not pry into people's pasts. She sounds like a remarkable woman. She is. Her husband was a friend of my uncle's. He died in a mining accident 15 years ago, and she decided to use the insurance money to help other women who found themselves alone. I send her business when I can, and she has never turned anyone away who genuinely needed help. And she will not judge me." Parker met her eyes across the fire. She will not judge you. I will make sure she understands your situation, and I trust her to treat you fairly. Beyond that, what you choose to tell people is up to you. You do not owe anyone your story, Miss Sterling. What happened in Stockton is your business, and you get to decide who knows about it. The idea that she could choose what to reveal, that her past did not have to define her future, was revolutionary. In Stockton, everyone had known her entire history, had watched her grow up and known her parents. There had been no possibility of reinvention, no chance to be anyone other than Josephine Sterling, the fallen woman. But in Sacramento, she could be whoever she wanted to be. She could be just another young woman looking for work, nothing more and nothing less. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. "What will you tell Mrs. Callahan about me?" she asked. "The truth, that you are a friend who needs help getting back on her feet, that you are hardworking and honest and deserving of a chance. The rest is your story to tell or not tell as you see fit." Josephine felt tears threaten again, but she blinked them back. She had cried enough for one lifetime. "You keep calling me your friend, but we barely know each other." Parker smiled, his teeth flashing white in the firelight. "I am a quick judge of character, Miss Sterling. Comes from working with horses. They teach you to read the truth beneath the surface. And what I see when I look at you is someone worth knowing, someone worth helping. So yes, I am calling you my friend, unless you object, of course." "I do not object," Josephine said softly. "I am honored, actually. You are the best friend I have had in a very long time." They sat together as the fire burned down to embers and the night deepened around them. Parker pointed out constellations and told her stories about the ranch and his childhood, clearly trying to distract her from darker thoughts. Josephine listened, grateful for the sound of his voice and the normalcy of the moment. When it was time to sleep, Parker made sure her bedroll was positioned safely near the fire and that she had everything she needed. He placed his own bedroll between her and the open darkness beyond their small camp, a subtle gesture of protection that did not go unnoticed. "Good night, Miss Sterling," he said. "Sleep well. We have another long day tomorrow." "Good night, Parker," she replied. "And thank you for everything." "No thanks necessary, just get some rest." But as Josephine lay in her bedroll staring up at the vast expanse of stars overhead, she knew that thanks were absolutely necessary. Parker Oakes had saved her life, certainly, but he had done something even more important. He had shown her that there were still good people in the world, people who saw past mistakes and offered grace instead of judgment. That knowledge was worth more than any material help he could provide. The next 3 days fell into a pleasant pattern. They would rise with the dawn, eat a simple breakfast, pack up camp, and ride until midday. Then they would rest during the hottest part of the day, letting the horses graze and recuperate while they sought shade and ate lunch. In the afternoon, they would ride until evening, then make camp again and share dinner by the fire. Josephine learned more about Parker with each passing day. He was 28 years old, the son of a schoolteacher mother who had died when he was young and a father who had disappeared shortly thereafter, leaving Parker to be raised by his uncle. He was patient and kind, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh despite herself. He knew an astonishing amount about the natural world, pointing out plants and animals and explaining their habits and uses. Parker, in turn, seemed genuinely interested in her stories about teaching, about the books she loved and the dreams she had once harbored of perhaps writing her own stories someday. He listened with real attention, asking thoughtful questions and encouraging her to talk about things she had not discussed with anyone in years. On the third evening, as they camped near a small creek with the lights of Sacramento visible in the distance, Josephine realized with a start that she did not want the journey to end. These days on the road with Parker had been some of the most peaceful of her life, and the thought of saying goodbye to him filled her with unexpected sadness. "We will reach the city tomorrow," Parker said, echoing her thoughts. "Probably by mid-morning if we get an early start. I will take you to Mrs. Callahan's first thing. And then you will leave." Josephine tried to keep her voice neutral, but she heard the wobble in it and knew Parker had heard it too. He was quiet for a moment, poking at the fire with a stick. "I will need to deliver the horses and conduct my business in the city. That will take a day or two. But I was thinking, if you do not mind, I could check back with you before I head home to the ranch. Make sure you are settled and doing all right." "I would like that very much," Josephine said, relief flooding through her. She was not ready to face the world without Parker Oakes as her ally, not yet. Maybe not ever, though that thought was too complicated to examine closely. "Good," Parker said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Then it is settled. Now, tell me more about those stories you want to write. What kind of tales interest you?" They talked late into the night, the conversation flowing easily from books to life to dreams for the future. Josephine found herself opening up in ways she had not anticipated, sharing hopes and fears she had kept locked inside for years. And Parker listened, really listened, offering observations and encouragement that made her feel valued and understood. When they finally retired to their bedrolls, Josephine lay awake for a long time, thinking about the strange turns life could take. A week ago, she had been at the lowest point of her existence, cast out and alone with no hope for the future. Now she was camped under the stars with a man who made her feel safe and respected, heading toward a city full of possibilities. And something else was stirring in her heart, something she was not quite ready to name but could no longer ignore. When she looked at Parker, she felt more than gratitude. She felt drawn to him in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. His kindness had awakened something in her that she thought Daniel Mercer had killed forever. The capacity to trust, to hope, maybe even to love again. But that was foolishness, she told herself sternly. Parker was helping her because he was a good man, not because he had any romantic interest in her. She was damaged goods, a fallen woman with a shameful past. He deserved better than that, deserved someone pure and untainted by scandal. The best thing she could do was accept his help with grace, build a new life in Sacramento, and let him return to his ranch without burdening him with feelings he would never reciprocate. With that resolution firmly in mind, Josephine finally drifted off to sleep, unaware that Parker was lying awake in his own bedroll, wrestling with very similar thoughts. Sacramento rose before them the next morning like a promise. The city sprawled along the river, a collection of wooden buildings and dirt streets that hummed with activity even from a distance. Josephine could see ships at the docks, wagons moving through the streets, and people everywhere, more people than she had seen in months. "It is bigger than I imagined," she said, feeling suddenly small and overwhelmed. "It is big," Parker agreed, "but Mrs. Callahan's place is away from the chaos. You will like it, I promise." They made their way through the outskirts of the city, Parker navigating the streets with the confidence of someone who had been here many times before. Josephine tried not to stare at everything like a country mouse, but it was difficult. There was so much to see. Shops displaying goods from around the world, restaurants advertising exotic cuisines, hotels and saloons and theaters all competing for attention. Finally, they turned onto a quieter street lined with respectable houses and shade trees. Parker stopped in front of a 3-story building with a neatly painted sign that read, "Callahan's Boarding House for Young Ladies." The front porch was swept clean. Flowers bloomed in window boxes, and lace curtains hung in the windows. "This is it," Parker said, dismounting and moving to help Josephine down from Silver. His hands were steady at her waist, and she felt the warmth of them even through the fabric of her dress. "It looks very nice," Josephine said, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach at his touch. "Come on. Let me introduce you." Parker knocked on the front door, and after a moment it swung open to reveal a woman in her 50s with iron gray hair pulled back in a tidy bun and sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her face was stern, but when she saw Parker it broke into a genuine smile. "Parker Oakes," she said warmly. "What brings you to my door? And who is this you have brought with you?" "Mrs. Callahan, this is my friend Josephine Sterling." "Miss Sterling, this is Mrs. Callahan, the finest landlady in Sacramento." Mrs. Callahan's sharp eyes studied Josephine for a long moment, taking in her worn dress, her tired face, and probably a dozen other details that Josephine was not even aware of revealing. But when the older woman spoke, her voice was kind. "Any friend of Parker's is welcome here. Come in, both of you. You look like you have been traveling." She ushered them into a front parlor that was clean and comfortable without being ostentatious. The furniture was sturdy, the floors were polished, and everything spoke of care and good management. Through a doorway, Josephine could see a dining room with a long table, and she heard the sound of women's voices coming from somewhere deeper in the house. "Sit, please, Mrs. Callahan said, gesturing to a sofa. "I will bring tea." When she had left the room, Josephine turned to Parker. "She seems formidable." "She is," Parker said, "but fair, and kinder than she likes to let on." Mrs. Callahan returned with a tea tray and poured for all of them with practiced efficiency. Once they were settled, she turned her attention to Parker. "Now then, tell me what brings you here." Parker glanced at Josephine, clearly asking permission. She nodded slightly, and he proceeded to tell Mrs. Callahan an edited version of the story. That Josephine had encountered trouble in her previous situation, that she needed a safe place to stay and help finding respectable work, and that he was vouching for her character. Mrs. Callahan listened without interrupting, her face revealing nothing of her thoughts. When Parker finished, she turned to Josephine. "Is this accurate, Miss Sterling?" "Yes, madam," Josephine said quietly, "and you are looking for honest work. You are not running from the law or hiding from a violent husband or anything of that nature." "No, madam, nothing like that. I just need a chance to start over somewhere new." Mrs. Callahan studied her for another long moment, then nodded decisively. "Very well. I have a room available on the 3rd floor. It is small but clean. Rent is $3 a week, which includes breakfast and dinner. You will need to find employment quickly, as I require payment in advance every Monday." Parker's recommendation counts for a great deal with me, so I will waive the usual first and last week's rent requirement and only ask for the first week now. "Does that seem acceptable?" Relief washed over Josephine. "More than acceptable. Thank you, Mrs. Callahan." "Do not thank me yet. I run a respectable establishment, and I expect all my girls to behave accordingly. No men above the 1st floor, no alcohol, no unseemly behavior of any kind. You will attend church on Sundays, and you will be in by 9 o'clock every evening. Break these rules and you will find yourself looking for new accommodations." "Understood." "Understood," Josephine said. "Good. Now let me show you to your room and then we can discuss employment opportunities." Josephine stood, then turned to Parker. "Will you be here when I come back down?" "I will wait," he promised. "I want to make sure everything is settled before I go." Mrs. Callahan led Josephine up 2 flights of stairs to a narrow hallway with several doors. She opened one to reveal a small room with a single bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. It was simple but clean, as promised, and to Josephine it looked like a palace. The privy is out back, and there is a washroom on each floor for bathing. Breakfast is at 7, dinner at 6. I expect you to be prompt." Mrs. Callahan paused, her expression softening slightly. "I do not know what happened to you in your previous situation, Miss Sterling, and I do not need to know. What I do know is that Parker Oakes has never brought someone to me who did not genuinely need help and deserve a second chance. So I am giving you that chance. What you do with it is up to you." "I will not let you down," Josephine said. "Or Parker. See that you do not. Now get yourself settled and come back down. I have some ideas about employment that might suit you." When Josephine returned to the parlor, she found Parker standing by the window, looking out at the street. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and the expression on his face was difficult to read. "Everything all right?" he asked. "More than all right. The room is perfect. Mrs. Callahan is going to help me find work." "I am glad," Parker said. He seemed to struggle with something, then added, "I should get going. I need to deliver those horses and find a place to stable them. But I will come back tomorrow to check on you if that is acceptable." "Please do," Josephine said. She wanted to say more, to express the gratitude and other feelings that were swirling through her, but the words stuck in her throat. Parker must have sensed her turmoil because he crossed the room and took her hand in both of his. "You are going to be fine, Miss Sterling. Better than fine. You are strong and smart, and you deserve all the good things coming your way. Do not forget that." "I will try," Josephine whispered. "Parker, I do not know how to thank you for everything you have done. You saved my life." "You would have done the same for me," Parker said simply. "And besides, this is not goodbye. It is just goodbye for now. I will see you tomorrow." He released her hand and headed for the door, pausing on the threshold. "Oh, and Miss Sterling, try to stop calling me Mr. Oakes. Parker is just fine. Only if you stop calling me Miss Sterling." "Josephine is just fine." He smiled at that, a warm expression that made her heart skip. "Deal. I will see you tomorrow, Josephine." And then he was gone, and Josephine was left standing in Mrs. Callahan's parlor, feeling both bereft and hopeful at the same time. Mrs. Callahan reappeared with a briskness that suggested she had been waiting for Parker to leave. "Now then, let us discuss employment. You said you were a teacher." "Yes, madam, for 4 years. Can you read and write well? Do arithmetic?" "Yes, madam, and I can teach music and basic French as well." Mrs. Callahan's eyes lit up with interest. "French, you say? That is unusual. Where did you learn?" "My mother was from Louisiana originally. She made sure I was educated in languages as well as other subjects." "Excellent. I may have the perfect position for you." A family here in Sacramento, the Harrisons, are looking for a governess for their 3 children. Mrs. Harrison wants someone who can teach more than just the basics. French would be a significant advantage. The position includes room and board if you want it, or you could live here and travel to their home daily. The pay is $25 a month. Josephine could hardly believe her ears. $25 a month was more than she had made as a school teacher, and the work would be similar. "That sounds wonderful. Do you think I would have a real chance at the position?" "I supply the Harrisons with several of their household staff, and Mrs. Harrison trusts my judgment. If I recommend you, she will give you serious consideration. Of course, you will need to interview with her and meet the children, but I think you have an excellent chance." Mrs. Callahan paused. "I should tell you, Mrs. Harrison will likely ask about your previous employment and why you left. What will you tell her?" This was the question Josephine had been dreading. "I am not sure. I do not want to lie, but I also do not want my past to prevent me from getting a job I would be good at. My advice: tell her that you left your previous position due to personal circumstances that are now resolved. If she presses, tell her the truth. That you were involved with a man who did not honor his promises, and you have paid the price for that mistake, but are ready to move forward. Most women will understand that story better than you might think. And if she judges me for it, then she was not going to hire you anyway. But I have known Lydia Harrison for 10 years, and she is a fair-minded woman. She cares more about whether you can teach her children well than about your romantic history. Josephine took a deep breath. All right, when can I meet her? I will send a message this afternoon and try to arrange something for tomorrow or the next day. In the meantime, you should rest and recover from your journey. You look exhausted. I feel exhausted, Josephine admitted, but also hopeful, more hopeful than I have felt in months. Good. Hope is an underrated commodity. Now go upstairs and lie down for a while. Dinner is at 6, and I expect you to join us. You can meet the other girls then. Josephine did as she was told, climbing the stairs to her small room and lying down on the narrow bed. The mattress was firmer than she was used to, but it felt like heaven after days of sleeping on the ground. She closed her eyes and tried to process everything that had happened. In less than a week, her entire life had transformed. She had gone from desperate and alone to having a safe place to stay and a promising job prospect. And all of it because Parker Oakes had chosen to help her, to see past her shame to the person underneath. Parker. Even thinking his name sent a warm flutter through her chest. She tried to tell herself it was just gratitude, just natural affection for someone who had been kind to her. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. She was falling for him, had probably been falling for him since that first night in the line shack when he had told her that shame did not live with him. But what could come of such feelings? Parker was a cowboy with dreams of his own ranch. She was a woman with a tarnished reputation and a complicated past. Even if he felt something for her, which she very much doubted, pursuing a relationship would be difficult at best. They lived in different worlds, and she could not ask him to give up his life for her. No, the best thing she could do was focus on building her new life here in Sacramento. If she got the position with the Harrisons, she would work hard and save money. Maybe eventually she could rent her own small place, establish herself as a respectable member of the community. Parker would visit sometimes when his work brought him to the city, and they would be friends. Good friends, and that would have to be enough. With that resolution firmly in mind, Josephine drifted off to sleep, unaware that Parker was having a very similar internal conversation with himself as he delivered the horses and made arrangements for his stay in the city. The next day brought two significant events. First, Mrs. Callahan arranged for Josephine to meet with Mrs. Harrison that afternoon. Second, Parker returned to the boarding house as promised, arriving just as Josephine was preparing for her interview. He found her in the parlor, pacing nervously in the one good dress she owned. Mrs. Callahan had helped her press it and arrange her hair into a respectable style, but Josephine still felt unprepared for such an important meeting. "You look lovely," Parker said from the doorway, and Josephine spun to face him. "Parker, I did not hear you come in. Mrs. Callahan let me in. She said you have an interview with a potential employer." "Yes, in less than an hour. I am terrified." Parker crossed the room and took her hands in his, steadying her. "You have no reason to be terrified. You are an excellent teacher, and any family would be lucky to have you educate their children. Just be yourself, tell the truth, and trust that it will work out as it should. What if she asks about why I left Stockton? Then you tell her what you are comfortable telling her. And if she cannot see past one mistake to recognize your qualities and qualifications, then she is not the right employer for you anyway." His confidence bolstered her, and Josephine felt some of her panic recede. "You have a remarkable ability to make me believe things will be all right." "That is because things will be all right. You are going to do wonderfully in this interview, and then you are going to get the job, and then you are going to build a good life here. I believe that with everything in me. I wish I had your faith." "Borrow mine until yours kicks in," Parker said with a smile. "Now, take a deep breath and show me that confident woman I know is in there." Josephine did as he instructed, squaring her shoulders and lifting her chin. "How is that? Perfect. Absolutely perfect, Mrs. Callahan appeared in the doorway. "The carriage is here to take you to the Harrisons, Miss Sterling. Best not to keep them waiting." Josephine nodded, gathered her reticule, and headed for the door. She paused to look back at Parker. "Will you be here when I return?" "I will wait as long as it takes," he promised. The interview with Mrs. Harrison went better than Josephine had dared hope. The woman was in her late 30s, gracious and intelligent, with a direct manner that Josephine appreciated. She asked about Josephine's education and teaching experience, about her philosophy on educating children, and about her skills in various subjects. Finally, Mrs. Harrison said, "Mrs. Callahan spoke very highly of you, Miss Sterling. But I must ask, why did you leave your previous teaching position?" The recommendation she gave me was rather vague on that point. Josephine had prepared for this question, but her mouth still went dry when it came. She chose her words carefully. "I was involved with a man who promised marriage but did not honor that promise. When the relationship ended badly, the town I lived in made it clear I was no longer welcome. I came to Sacramento to start fresh, and I am hoping for a chance to prove that I am still an excellent teacher, regardless of my personal mistakes." She waited for judgment, for the pursing of lips and the cooling of interest that she had seen so many times in Stockton. But Mrs. Harrison merely nodded thoughtfully. "I appreciate your honesty, Miss Sterling, and I am sorry you experienced such hardship. Lord knows we women are judged more harshly for such things than men, though it takes two to make such mistakes." She paused. "What matters to me is whether you can teach my children well and provide them with a moral example of resilience and integrity. From what I have seen and heard today, I believe you can do both. The position is yours if you want it." Josephine could hardly believe what she was hearing. "Truly, truly. You would start Monday, working 6 days a week from 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. The children are 7, 9, and 11, all bright and eager to learn. I will expect regular reports on their progress, and I will want to see their work periodically. In return, you will receive $25 monthly, paid on the 1st of each month. Does that suit you?" "Yes, madam." "It suits me very well. Thank you, Mrs. Harrison. I promise you will not regret this." "I do not believe I will. Now let me introduce you to the children. They are quite excited to meet their new governess." By the time Josephine returned to the boarding house 2 hours later, she was exhausted but elated. The Harrison children had been delightful, well-mannered but lively, and clearly bright. The oldest, a girl named Margaret, had peppered her with questions about France and begged to start French lessons immediately. The middle child, a boy named Henry, wanted to learn about nature and animals. The youngest, a boy named Thomas, mostly wanted to show Josephine his collection of interesting rocks. Parker was waiting in the parlor exactly where she had left him, though now he had a book in his hands. He looked up when she entered, and his face broke into a smile at her expression. "You got it." "I got it," Josephine laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. "Mrs. Harrison hired me on the spot. I start Monday. $25 a month, Parker. I can scarcely believe it." Parker stood and caught her up in a spontaneous hug, spinning her around once before setting her back on her feet. "I told you. I knew you would do wonderfully." Josephine found herself laughing and crying at the same time, overcome with relief and joy and gratitude. When Parker released her, she had to wipe her eyes. "I am sorry," she said. "I seem to cry at the drop of a hat these days." "These are good tears," Parker said, "and you have earned every one of them. Josephine, I am so proud of you." The warmth in his voice made her heart swell. "I could not have done any of this without you. You gave me hope when I had none, helped me when I had no right to expect it. I will never forget that, Parker." Something shifted in his expression, becoming more serious. "Josephine, there is something I need to tell you. I have been thinking about it all day, and I do not want to leave Sacramento without saying it." Her heart began to race. "What is it?" But before he could answer, Mrs. Callahan appeared in the doorway. "Oh good, you are back, and by your face I can see you got the position." "Congratulations, Miss Sterling. Now dinner is in 20 minutes and I expect both of you to join us. Parker, I insist you stay. It is the least we can do after you delivered us such an excellent tenant." Parker glanced at Josephine, clearly frustrated by the interruption. "I would be honored, Mrs. Callahan." "Good, that is settled. 20 minutes, parlor." As Mrs. Callahan bustled away, Josephine turned back to Parker. "What were you going to say?" "It can wait until after dinner," Parker said. "It should wait, actually. I want to do this properly." "Do what properly?" But he just smiled mysteriously. "Patience, Josephine. All will be revealed soon enough." Dinner was a lively affair with Mrs. Callahan and the 6 other young women currently living at the boarding house. They welcomed Josephine warmly and congratulated her on finding employment so quickly. Parker charmed them all with stories of ranch life and cowboy adventures, making them laugh with tales of ornery cattle and mishaps during roundups. Josephine watched him, marveling at how comfortable he was in any situation. He treated everyone with the same easy respect, from Mrs. Callahan to the youngest girl at the table, a shy 17-year-old named Sarah who was working as a seamstress's assistant. After dinner, Parker asked Josephine if she would take a walk with him. Mrs. Callahan raised an eyebrow but gave permission, reminding Josephine that she needed to be back by 9 o'clock. They walked through the Sacramento streets as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Parker guided them toward the river, where they could walk along the waterfront and watch the boats. "I love this time of day," Parker said. "Everything feels peaceful, like the world is taking a breath before night falls." "It is beautiful," Josephine agreed. "Parker, what did you want to tell me earlier?" He was quiet for a moment, seeming to gather his thoughts. "I have been thinking a lot over the past few days. About you, about me, about what happens next." "You have to go back to your ranch," Josephine said, trying to keep the disappointment out of her voice. "I know that, but I hope you will visit sometimes when you come to Sacramento." "That is just it," Parker said. "I do not want to just visit sometimes." "Josephine, these past few days with you have been some of the best of my life. Getting to know you, helping you, seeing you start to heal and hope again, it has all meant more to me than I can properly express." Josephine's heart was pounding now. "It has meant a great deal to me as well. You have been such a good friend." Parker stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I do not want to be just your friend, Josephine. I want to be more than that. I know it is too soon. I know you have been through hell and probably need time to heal. But I have to tell you the truth. I have fallen for you, completely and utterly fallen for you." Josephine stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. "You have feelings for me, romantic feelings." "Yes, I know I should have kept them to myself, given everything you have been through. But I could not leave Sacramento without at least telling you the truth. You deserve to know that someone sees you for who you truly are and thinks you are remarkable." "Parker," Josephine whispered, her eyes filling with tears for what felt like the 100th time that week. "I thought I was the only one. I have been trying so hard not to fall for you, telling myself you were just being kind, that you could never want someone like me." "Someone like you," Parker repeated incredulously. "Josephine, you are brave and strong and beautiful, inside and out. You made a mistake trusting the wrong person, but that does not define you. What defines you is how you picked yourself up and kept going despite everything." "I only kept going because you helped me," she said. "Before I met you, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never be anything other than the shamed woman from Stockton. But you looked at me and saw something worth saving." "I saw someone worth knowing," Parker corrected. "Worth caring about, worth loving, though I know it is far too soon to use that word. But Josephine, if you are willing, I would like to court you properly. I can come to Sacramento twice a month, maybe more. We can spend time together, get to know each other better. And maybe, if things go the way I hope they will, we can build something real together." Josephine felt as if her heart might burst from her chest. "You truly want that? Even knowing my history, knowing that I can never give you a reputation as pure as you deserve?" Parker cupped her face gently in his hands. "I do not care about reputations. I care about you. And yes, I want that more than I have wanted anything in a very long time." "Then yes," Josephine said, smiling through her tears. "Yes, I would love for you to court me, though I should warn you I come with considerable baggage." "We all have baggage," Parker said. "The question is whether we find someone willing to help us carry it. And Josephine, I am volunteering for the job." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. But Josephine did not want to pull away. She tilted her face up to meet his, and when his lips touched hers, it was gentle and sweet and full of promise. It was nothing like the demanding kisses Daniel had pressed on her, full of urgency and selfishness. This was different, respectful, tender, asking rather than taking. When they finally pulled apart, Josephine was breathless and smiling. "That was nice." "Just nice," Parker teased. "I will have to work on my technique." "Well, perhaps you should practice," Josephine said, surprising herself with her boldness. Parker laughed and obliged, kissing her again as the sun set over the Sacramento River, and the world seemed to glow with possibility. Over the following weeks, Parker was true to his word. He returned to the Crossroads Ranch but came back to Sacramento every 2 weeks without fail. He would arrive on a Friday evening and stay until Sunday afternoon, spending every possible moment with Josephine. They fell into a comfortable courtship pattern. On Saturdays, Parker would escort Josephine around the city, showing her sights she had not yet discovered. They visited the state capitol building, walked through the gardens, attended plays at the theater, and had picnics by the river. On Sundays, they attended church together at Mrs. Callahan's insistence, then spent the afternoon talking and getting to know each other more deeply. Josephine thrived in her position with the Harrisons. The children adored her, and she found immense satisfaction in teaching them. Margaret was proving to have a real gift for languages. Henry had a scientific mind that delighted in observation and experimentation. And young Thomas was showing artistic talent. Mrs. Harrison was pleased with their progress and had already increased Josephine's salary by $5 a month. Between her earnings and careful spending, Josephine was able to save money for the first time in her life. She paid Mrs. Callahan faithfully every week and still managed to put aside a few dollars each month. It felt good to be financially independent, to know she could take care of herself. But more than the job or the money or the safety of Mrs. Callahan's boarding house, what truly made Josephine happy was Parker. With each visit, her feelings for him grew stronger. She loved his laugh, his stories, his gentle way with animals and children. She loved how he treated her as an equal, asking her opinions and respecting her thoughts. She loved how he never made her feel ashamed of her past, but instead focused on her future. And Parker seemed equally smitten. He brought her small gifts, wildflowers he picked on the ride to Sacramento, a book of poetry he thought she would enjoy, a beautiful silk scarf in blue that matched her eyes. He wrote her letters between visits, sharing details of ranch life and telling her how much he missed her. By October, when the heat of summer had given way to the crisp coolness of autumn, both of them knew they were in love, though neither had spoken the words aloud yet. It was on a perfect Saturday in mid-October that Parker asked Josephine to take a ride with him outside the city. He borrowed a buggy from a friend, and they drove out into the countryside, the golden hills of California rolling away in all directions under a brilliantly blue sky. Parker pulled the buggy to a stop near a grove of oak trees, their leaves just beginning to turn. He helped Josephine down, then reached into the back and pulled out a blanket and a basket. "A picnic," Josephine said with delight. "A picnic," Parker confirmed. "I thought we could use some time away from the city, just the two of us." He spread the blanket in the shade and they sat together, eating the lunch he had packed. As they ate, Parker seemed nervous, fidgeting in a way that was unlike him. Finally, Josephine put her hand on his arm. "Parker, what is wrong? You have been jumpy all day." He took a deep breath. "Nothing is wrong. Actually, everything is very right, but I have something important to ask you and I am nervous about it." Josephine's heart began to race. "What is it?" Parker took her hands in his. "Josephine, I love you. I think I started loving you that first day I found you on the road, though it took me a while to recognize it. You are brave and smart and kind, and you make me want to be a better man. These past few months of courting you have been the happiest of my life." Tears were already starting to fall down Josephine's cheeks, but Parker continued. "I know we have not been courting long by conventional standards, but I also know that when something is right, you just know. And this is right, Josephine. You and me, we are right together. So I am asking you, will you marry me? Will you take a chance on a cowboy with modest prospects but a whole lot of love to give?" Josephine was crying in earnest now, but she was also smiling. "Yes. Yes, Parker, I will marry you. I love you too so much. You saved me in every way a person can be saved, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Parker let out a whoop of joy and pulled her into his arms, kissing her soundly. When they finally broke apart, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. "It was my mother's," he said. "The only thing I have from her. I know it is not fancy, but I would be honored if you would wear it." "It is perfect," Josephine said, holding out her hand so he could slip the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. They sat together in the golden October sunshine, wrapped in each other's arms and making plans for their future. Parker had been saving for years to buy his own land, and he thought he almost had enough. They would look for a property with a house, somewhere they could start their own ranch. It would be small at first, but they would build it together. "What about your teaching?" Parker asked. "I do not want you to give up something you love." "I love teaching," Josephine said, "but I love you more. And honestly, what I love most about teaching is helping children learn and grow. Maybe one day we will have children of our own to teach." Parker's eyes lit up at the mention of children. "You would want that. After everything you went through," Josephine had wondered about this herself. The miscarriage had been traumatic, and for a while she had thought she might never want to risk pregnancy again. But that had been when she was alone and afraid. Now, with Parker by her side, the idea of children filled her with hope rather than fear. "I would want that," she said softly. "Not right away, perhaps, but someday, yes. I want to have a family with you, Parker." He kissed her again, gently and reverently. "Then we will have a family, and they will be loved and cherished, every single one." They set the wedding date for December, giving themselves 2 months to make preparations. Mrs. Callahan was thrilled and immediately took charge of organizing everything. Mrs. Harrison graciously gave Josephine time off to prepare and even helped with the wedding dress, connecting her with an excellent seamstress. Parker wrote to his uncle at the Crossroads Ranch, asking for time off and inviting him to the wedding. His uncle wrote back with enthusiastic congratulations and an unexpected gift, $5,000 to help Parker buy land and start his own ranch. Parker was overwhelmed by the generosity, and it moved their timeline up significantly. By mid-November, he had found and purchased a beautiful 200 acres about 20 miles from Sacramento, complete with a sturdy house, a barn, and good grazing land. Josephine went to see the property with Parker one sunny November day, and she fell in love with it immediately. The house was modest but well built, with 3 bedrooms, a good kitchen, and a front porch that looked out over rolling hills. The barn needed some repairs, but nothing Parker could not handle. There was even a small creek running through the property, ensuring good water for cattle and crops. "What do you think?" Parker asked anxiously. "I know it is not much right now, but we can build it up over time." "It is perfect," Josephine breathed. "Absolutely perfect. This will be our home, Parker, our fresh start." They walked the property hand in hand, making plans for where they would fence pastures, where they might plant a garden, where the cattle would graze. It felt surreal and wonderful, this future they were building together. The wedding took place on a crisp December day at the church Mrs. Callahan attended. It was a small affair with only close friends present, but it was perfect. Mrs. Callahan and Mrs. Harrison both attended, along with the other girls from the boarding house. Parker's uncle came from the Crossroads Ranch, along with 2 of Parker's closest friends from his cowboy days. Josephine wore a simple but elegant dress of cream silk, and she carried a small bouquet of winter roses that Parker had somehow managed to obtain. When she walked down the aisle and saw him waiting for her at the altar, his eyes shining with love and wonder, she knew she was making the right choice. The pastor was a kind, older man who Mrs. Callahan trusted. He spoke movingly about love and second chances, about how grace allowed people to move past their mistakes and build new lives. As Josephine listened to his words, she thought about how far she had come from that desperate day when Stockton had cast her out. She had been so certain her life was over, that she would never know happiness or respect again. But here she was, marrying a good man who loved her completely, starting a new life full of promise. And all because Parker Oaks had chosen to stop and help a stranger in trouble, to offer compassion instead of judgment. When it came time for them to exchange vows, Parker spoke first. "Josephine, I promise to love you and cherish you all the days of my life. I promise to stand by you in good times and bad, to be your partner and your friend. I promise that with me, shame does not exist. Only love, only grace, only second chances. You have my heart forever." Josephine was crying, but she managed to speak her own vows through the tears. "Parker, I promise to love you with everything I am. You saved me when I thought I was beyond saving, and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for your kindness and your love. I promise to build a life with you, to be your partner in all things, to stand by your side no matter what comes. You have given me hope and a future, and I give you my heart in return." They exchanged rings, and when the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Parker kissed her with such tenderness that several people in the congregation had to wipe their eyes. The reception was held at Mrs. Callahan's boarding house, with cake and dancing and joy. Josephine danced with Parker, then with his uncle, then with Mrs. Harrison's husband. Everyone was smiling, celebrating not just the marriage but the triumph of love over adversity, of hope over despair. As the evening wore on and the party began to wind down, Parker and Josephine prepared to leave for their new home. They were going to spend their wedding night at the ranch, beginning their married life in the place where they would build their future. Mrs. Callahan hugged Josephine tightly before they left. "You have done well, my dear," she whispered. "I am so proud of you. Thank you for everything," Josephine replied. "You gave me a chance when I needed it most." "That is what we do for each other," Mrs. Callahan said. "We lift each other up. Now go be happy with that good man of yours." Parker and Josephine rode out to the ranch in the buggy as the stars began to appear overhead. It was cold, but Parker wrapped a blanket around Josephine's shoulders and held her close as he drove. When they arrived at the ranch, he insisted on carrying her over the threshold, making her laugh with his determination. Inside, the house was warm and welcoming. Parker had come out earlier in the week to light fires in all the stoves and stock the pantry with supplies. He had even scattered rose petals on the bed in the master bedroom, a romantic gesture that made Josephine's heart swell. "Welcome home, Mrs. Oakes," Parker said, setting her down gently. "Mrs. Oakes," Josephine repeated wonderingly. "I am going to have to get used to that." "You have the rest of your life to practice," Parker said with a smile. Their wedding night was everything Josephine had hoped for, and nothing like her experiences with Daniel. Parker was patient and tender, treating her with reverence and care. He took his time, making sure she felt safe and loved, and when they finally came together as husband and wife, it was beautiful and right in a way Josephine had not known was possible. Afterward, they lay together in the darkness, wrapped in each other's arms. "Are you happy?" Parker asked softly. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Josephine replied honestly. "Parker, I never believed I would have this. A good man who loves me, a home, a future. You gave me all of that." "We gave it to each other," Parker corrected. "You gave me purpose, Josephine. Before I met you, I was just drifting through life, working hard but not really building toward anything. Now I have everything I ever wanted. A wife I adore, land to call my own, dreams to work toward. You did that." They talked late into the night, making plans and sharing hopes. They would start with a small herd of cattle, maybe 20 head to begin with. Parker would work the ranch while Josephine kept the house and perhaps took in a few students for private lessons to earn extra money. They would build slowly and carefully, creating something lasting. The first year of their marriage was hard work but filled with joy. Parker labored from dawn to dusk, building fences, repairing the barn, tending the growing herd. Josephine kept their home, cooked meals that made Parker groan with pleasure, and indeed took on 3 students for lessons, earning additional income that helped them buy more cattle. They faced challenges, as all new ranchers did. A harsh winter storm in January killed 2 of their cattle. In March, part of the barn roof collapsed and had to be completely rebuilt. In June, a dry spell threatened the creek that supplied their water. But through it all, they faced everything together, their love growing stronger with each obstacle overcome. On difficult days, when Parker was exhausted and discouraged, Josephine would remind him of how far they had come. On days when Josephine felt overwhelmed by the isolation and hard work of ranch life, Parker would hold her close and tell her stories that made her laugh. By the time their first anniversary arrived, the ranch was thriving. Their herd had grown to 40 head, the barn was fully repaired and expanded, and they had added a small chicken coop that Josephine tended with care. More importantly, they were happy, truly and deeply happy in a way that people who have survived hardship often are. On their anniversary night, as they sat together on their front porch watching the sunset, Parker took Josephine's hand. "I have been thinking," he said. About everything that happened to bring us to this moment. All the pain you endured, all the challenges we have faced. And I realized something. I would not change any of it, because all of it led us here to this life we are building together. I feel the same way, Josephine said. I used to think of Stockton as the worst thing that ever happened to me. And it was terrible, truly terrible. But if I had not been cast out, I would never have met you. I would have spent my life teaching in a small town, never knowing what it was like to be truly loved. So yes, I would not change it either. You ever think about going back, showing them how wrong they were about you? Josephine considered the question. Sometimes, but mostly I just feel sorry for them. They are still living in that small town with their small minds, afraid of anything different. We are here, free and happy and building something real. I think we got the better end of the bargain. Parker smiled and kissed her temple. We definitely did. The following spring brought joyful news. Josephine was pregnant. When she told Parker, he swept her up in his arms and spun her around, laughing with delight. But then he set her down immediately, suddenly worried that he had been too rough. I am not made of glass, Josephine laughed. And the baby will be fine. Women have been having babies while doing ranch work for centuries. But Parker insisted on hiring a girl from town to come help with the housework, freeing Josephine from the heavier tasks. He fussed over her constantly, making sure she ate well and rested enough. Josephine found it endearing, though she had to remind him occasionally that pregnancy was not an illness. The baby was born on a warm November day, exactly 2 years after Parker had proposed. The labor was long and difficult, bringing back traumatic memories of Josephine's miscarriage. But Parker stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and encouraging her, and when their son finally entered the world with a lusty cry, it was the most beautiful sound either of them had ever heard. They named him Peter, after Parker's father who had died when Parker was young. Peter Oakes was a healthy, vigorous baby with his father's dark hair and his mother's blue eyes. Parker was completely smitten, spending hours just watching his son sleep or holding him and talking to him in a soft voice. "He is perfect," Parker said one night as they sat together in the nursery they had prepared. "Absolutely perfect. He is," Josephine agreed. "And he is going to grow up knowing he is loved and wanted, knowing that his parents would do anything for him. He will never doubt it," Parker promised. Peter was followed 2 years later by a daughter they named Patricia, and 2 years after that by another son named Philip. Each birth brought its own joys and challenges, but through it all, Parker and Josephine's love remained strong. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. By the time Peter was 10, they had expanded to 500 acres and a herd of over 200 cattle. They had hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work, and Parker had gained a reputation as one of the best cattlemen in the region. Josephine had stopped taking students when Patricia was born, finding that 3 children kept her quite busy enough. But she loved being a mother, loved teaching her own children and watching them grow. Peter was showing signs of following in his father's footsteps, already skilled with horses and eager to help with ranch work. Patricia was bright and curious, constantly asking questions about everything. And Philip, the youngest, was sweet and sensitive, with a gift for music that delighted his mother. On their 10th anniversary, Parker surprised Josephine with a trip to San Francisco. They left the children with his uncle at the Crossroads Ranch and spent 3 days in the city, staying in a fine hotel and attending the opera. It was glamorous and exciting, but both of them were glad to return to their ranch and their children. "I think I am too much of a country woman now for city life," Josephine said as they drove home. "I miss the quiet and the open space. And the children," Parker added, "and the children most of all. As the years passed, the Oaks family became pillars of their community. Parker served on the local Ranchers Association, helping to resolve disputes and organize cattle drives. Josephine started a small school in their home, teaching not just her own children but several neighbors' children as well. She never charged for her services, considering it her way of giving back. When Josephine's story eventually came out, as such stories inevitably do, she was surprised by the community's reaction. Most people were sympathetic, admiring her resilience and the life she had built. A few were judgmental, but Josephine found she no longer cared what small-minded people thought. She had Parker, her children, her ranch, and her self-respect. That was more than enough. Years turned into decades. Peter grew up and married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring spread, taking over much of the day-to-day operation of the ranch. Patricia became a teacher like her mother, though she chose to work in Sacramento, marrying a lawyer and giving Josephine and Parker 4 grandchildren. Philip pursued his love of music, becoming a piano teacher and marrying a singer he met in San Francisco. Through it all, Parker and Josephine remained devoted to each other. Their love had been forged in hardship and tested by time, and it had only grown stronger. They still sat together on their front porch every evening, watching the sunset and talking about their day. They still held hands when they walked, and Parker still looked at Josephine with the same wonder and love he had shown that first day when he told her shame did not live with him. On their 40th anniversary, their children organized a huge celebration at the ranch. Family and friends came from all over California to honor the couple who had built such a remarkable life together. As Josephine looked around at the crowd, at her children and grandchildren and the friends they had made over the years, she felt overwhelming gratitude. "What are you thinking?" Parker asked, coming to stand beside her. "I am thinking about that day you found me on the road," Josephine said. "About how desperate and alone I felt, how certain I was that my life was over. And I am thinking about how wrong I was. My life was not over. It had not even really begun yet." Parker wrapped his arm around her waist. "That day changed both our lives. I found you, but you saved me just as much as I saved you. You gave me purpose and love and a family. You made me the man I always wanted to be." "We did that for each other," Josephine said, echoing words Parker had spoken on their wedding night so many years ago. "And I would do it all over again, every hardship and every challenge, just to end up right here with you. I love you, Josephine Oaks. I have loved you for 40 years, and I will love you for however many more years we are granted. And I love you, Parker Oaks. Thank you for showing me that shame does not have to be permanent, that second chances are real, and that love can heal even the deepest wounds." They stood together on the porch of the home they had built, surrounded by the life they had created, and watched the sun set over their land. It was not the ending Josephine had imagined for herself when she was cast out of Stockton all those years ago. It was infinitely better. Their story was not one of perfect people making perfect choices. It was a story of human mistakes and divine grace, of cruelty overcome by kindness, of shame transformed by love. It was a story that proved the power of second chances and the possibility of redemption. And it was a story that would be passed down through generations of Oaks children, a reminder that no matter how dark the present might seem, hope and love could light the way to a brighter future. Josephine lived to be 82, spending her final years surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Parker outlived her by only 3 months, unable to imagine a world without his beloved wife in it. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking their ranch, the land they had built together serving as their eternal resting place. On their shared headstone, their children inscribed a simple message that captured the essence of their parents' love story. Here lie Parker and Josephine Oakes. He offered grace when the world offered shame. She offered love when he needed purpose. Together, they proved that second chances can lead to first-class lives. And in the house they had built, in the ranch they had created, in the children they had raised, and the community they had served, their legacy lived on. A legacy not of perfection, but of resilience. Not of judgment, but of grace. Not of shame, but of redemption. For Parker and Josephine Oakes had learned a truth that too many people never discover, that our mistakes do not define us. Our responses to those mistakes, the grace we extend to others and accept for ourselves, the love we cultivate and the lives we build, these are the things that truly matter. And their love story, which had begun with a desperate woman cast out, and a compassionate cowboy who refused to let shame win, became a testament to the enduring power of second chances and the transformative nature of unconditional love. Their children grew old telling their story. Their grandchildren shared it with their own children. And somewhere in California, in a fertile valley where cattle still graze and the sun still sets in spectacular colors, the Oaks Ranch stands as a monument to two people who refused to let the world's judgment determine their worth. Parker had been right all those years ago when he found Josephine collapsed by the side of the road. Shame did not live with him. Only second chances did. And those second chances had grown into a lifetime of love, a family that spanned generations, and a legacy that would endure long after both of them were gone. It was not the story anyone would have predicted for the shamed schoolteacher cast out of Stockton. But it was the story she deserved, the story they both deserved. And in the end, it was a story with the only ending that truly mattered. They lived happily ever after, surrounded by love and secure in the knowledge that they had found in each other everything they had been searching for. The ranch continued to thrive under Peter's management, then his sons, then his grandsons. Each generation added their own improvements and innovations, but they all maintained the core values Parker and Josephine had established: hard work, integrity, compassion, and the belief that everyone deserved a second chance. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun was setting just right, people swore they could feel the presence of Parker and Josephine still there, still watching over the land they had loved, still whispering to each other about the beautiful life they had built from the ashes of despair. For theirs was a love that transcended time, a love that had conquered shame and grown stronger through every trial. It was the kind of love that people write songs about, that poets try to capture in verse, that storytellers pass down through generations. And it all began with a simple choice: to offer help instead of judgment, to see potential instead of ruin, to believe in second chances when the world insisted on permanent condemnation. That choice, made by a cowboy on a dusty California road in 1878, changed two lives and created a legacy that would touch countless others. Parker and Josephine Oakes had lived fully, loved deeply, and left the world better than they found it. And in doing so, they had proved that no matter how far someone has fallen, no matter how loud the voices of shame might be, there is always hope for redemption, always possibility for transformation, always room for second chances. Their story was complete, their lives fulfilled, their love eternal. And that, in the end, is the very best kind of happily ever after.